Mason told me his new fiancée was a Pulitzer Prize winner who was frankly too accomplished for our usual family dinners. He actually pulled me aside, wearing that sympathetic wince he perfected in boarding school, and suggested I keep things simple so I would not embarrass myself trying to compete. 3 weeks later, that same woman sat across from me with a voice recorder, asking why I was the only person in my family willing to tell the truth. The numbers on my monitor were beautiful because they were honest. Unlike the people I was about to have dinner with, the data in front of me did not care about tone, or pedigree, or how polite you looked while you were lying. The spreadsheet detailed the repayment history of a small bakery in one of the city's underbanked neighborhoods. By traditional standards, the owner was a liability. By my company's standards, based on cash flow velocity and community retention, she was a rock-solid investment. I hit the approve button. Somewhere across the city, a woman named Elena was going to get an email telling her that $40,000 was hitting her business account, and she would not have to lay off her 2 employees. That was the job. That was the mission. My co-founder, Ben, leaned into my office doorway. He was holding a lukewarm coffee and looking at me with the weary expression of a man who had spent 3 hours arguing with a server migration team. "You are still here," he said. "It is 6:30 on a Friday. I close the laptop. I have to go to my parents' house. Mason is bringing the new girlfriend." Ben grimaced. "The one from the newspapers? The one with the Pulitzer?" I corrected. "And yes, the one from the newspapers. Good luck." Ben said, "Try not to let them treat you like the IT support staff." I laughed, but the sound was hollow in my throat. My company, Fairline Analytics, had processed over $12 million in fair financing for small businesses in the last 18 months. We were profitable. We were growing. We were actually changing the landscape of local lending. But to my mother and father, and especially to my older brother Mason, I was simply in a phase. I was dabbling. I was lucky. I gathered my things, checking my reflection in the darkened window of the office. 33 years old. I wore a tailored blazer that cost more than my first car, bought with my own money. I looked successful. I felt successful, at least when I was inside these 4 walls. But I knew that the moment I crossed the threshold of the Collins family home, the blazer would just look like a costume, and I would shrink back down to being the little sister who needed to be managed. I drove to the suburbs in silence. The house was a sprawling colonial that my parents had bought when Mason first made junior partner at Vantage Row Group. It was a house designed to impress people, with a driveway that was slightly too long and hedges that were manicured into submission. When I walked in, the air already smelled like expensive wine and anxiety. My mother, Joyce, was fluttering around the entryway, adjusting a vase of lilies that looked perfectly fine. "Natalie, you are late," she said, not looking at me. I checked my watch. "I am exactly on time. Mom, 7 o'clock. Well, Mason and Clara have been here for 10 minutes, she said, finally turning to me. Her eyes scanned my outfit, finding a loose thread I had missed. She sighed. "You look tired. Are you sleeping?" "I am running a company." "Mom." She patted my arm, a gesture that was dismissive rather than affectionate. "Of course. Your project. Just try to smile tonight. All right? Clara is, well, she is very impressive. We want to make a good impression." The implication was clear. I was the variable that could ruin the equation. I walked into the living room. My father, Robert, was standing by the fireplace, holding a scotch. Mason was next to him, laughing at something, his posture relaxed and expansive. Mason was 36, handsome in a way that suggested he had never truly struggled for anything. He had the Collins jawline and the easy confidence of a man who worked in high-level consulting, where the product was mostly handshake agreements and slide decks. And then there was Clara. I had seen her picture, of course. Clara Wynne, investigative journalist, the woman who had broken the scandal about the water supply in the state capitol 3 years ago. She was smaller than I expected, sitting on the beige sofa with her legs crossed at the ankle. She wore a simple navy dress and no jewelry. She looked serious, sharp, and entirely out of place in my parents' living room. "Natalie," Mason said, his voice booming. There she is, the entrepreneur. He came over and hugged me. A quick, hard squeeze that felt more like a headlock. He smelled of sandalwood and expensive gin. Mason, I said, good to see you. He kept his hand on my shoulder, steering me toward the sofa. Clara, this is the baby sister I told you about, Natalie. She runs a little tech startup downtown. Fairline is not little, I said, keeping my voice light. We have 20 employees. Mason? Clara stood up. She did not smile. Exactly. But her expression was open. She extended a hand. It is nice to meet you. Natalie, I read about your Series A round in the Business Journal last month. Congratulations. I froze. My own family had never mentioned the Series A funding round, mostly because they did not understand what it meant. Mason blinked, looking between us. You read the Business Journal? Mason asked, his tone joking but his eyes tight. I read everything, Clara said. She looked at me, her grip firm. It is a fascinating model. Algorithm-based risk assessment for minority-owned businesses. I felt a flush of genuine surprise. Yes, that is exactly it. Well, let's not talk shop, my father interrupted, stepping in as if business talk from his daughter was a social faux pas. Mason, pour your sister a drink. We have champagne chilling. The dynamic reasserted itself instantly. The men spoke. The women were herded toward the dining room. I sat in my usual spot, the chair nearest the kitchen door, the one that made it easiest to get up and help clear the plates. Dinner was a performance. My mother had ordered catering but plated it to look homemade. She asked Clara questions that were clearly rehearsed. How is the reporting going? Do you have to travel much? It was as if they were interviewing her for the position of daughter-in-law, and they had already decided she was overqualified. Then came the announcement. We were halfway through the roasted lamb when Mason clinked his fork against his wine glass. The sound was sharp, cutting through the polite conversation. I have some news, Mason said. He reached over and took Clara's hand. She looked down at the tablecloth, a faint blush rising on her cheeks. We are getting married, Mason said. My mother gasped, as if she hadn't been predicting this for 6 months. My father stood up and shook Mason's hand, then leaned over to kiss Clara on the cheek. There was a flurry of toasts, of welcome to the family, of we are so blessed. I stood up and smiled. Congratulations, I said. That is wonderful news. Thank you. Natalie, Mason said. He looked at me, his eyes gleaming with triumph. I really hit the jackpot, didn't I? You did. I said, and I meant it. Clara was brilliant. Later, while my parents were showing Clara the backyard garden, my mother's pride and joy, Mason cornered me near the sidebar. He poured himself another drink, his movements slightly loose. She is something else, right? He asked. She is very smart. I said, I like that she knew about my company. Mason laughed. A short, sharp bark. Yeah, she does her homework. Listen, Nat. He stepped closer, invading my personal space. His voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper, the kind he used when we were kids, and he wanted me to lie to our parents for him. We are going to have a lot of events coming up. Engagement party, rehearsal, the wedding itself. It is going to be high profile. Clara's colleagues, my partners at Vantage Row, heavy hitters. Okay, I said, feeling the muscles in my neck tighten. I just need you to relax, he said. Relax? Yeah. You know how you get intense. You start talking about your data and your mission and the little guys you are saving. I stared at him. You mean my career? I mean, Mason said, sighing as if I were being difficult on purpose, that Clara is a Pulitzer Prize winner. Natalie, she is literally a once-in-a-generation talent. She is too accomplished for anyone to try to go toe-to-toe with her. I felt the heat rise in my chest. I am not trying to compete with her. Mason, good, he said. He patted my cheek, a gesture so patronizing it made my teeth ache. Just keep it simple. Be the supportive sister. Don't try to impress anyone. You don't want to embarrass yourself by trying to punch above your weight class. These people are sharks. You are you. He smiled. satisfied that he had protected me from my own ambition, and walked away to join our parents. I stood there for a long moment, gripping the stem of my wine glass so hard I thought it might snap. It was an old bruise, this feeling, the sensation of being small, of being a prop in the background of Mason's grand life. Keep it simple. Don't embarrass anyone. I went into the kitchen to get some water, needing to be away from them. My mother followed me in a moment later. She was beaming, her face flushed with excitement. "Can you believe it?" she whispered. "A journalist of her stature. The wedding will be in the society pages. Natalie, I am happy for him. Mom." "Listen," she said, her voice shifting to a practical register. "We are going to need help with the engagement party. I was thinking, since your company is doing so well, maybe you could sponsor the bar? As a gift?" I blinked. "You want me to pay for the alcohol?" "Well, not just pay for it, sponsor it. We could put a little sign up. Sponsored by Fairline. It would be good exposure for you, and it would help us out. The venue Mason wants is incredibly expensive, so I am not a guest." I said, "I am a corporate sponsor." "Oh, stop it," she said, waving her hand. "You are family, but you have done so well with your little loans. Mason has a real career, with real expenses. He has a mortgage. He has appearances to maintain. You are single. You have disposable income. It is just a nice gesture." "Natalie." I looked at my mother. I saw the calculation in her eyes. She did not see a CEO. She saw a checkbook that could help her golden son look even shinier. "I will think about it." I said. "Good," she said, and turned back to the party. I walked out the back door, needing air. The patio was dark, lit only by the spill of light from the living room windows. I leaned against the railing, taking deep breaths of the cool night air. I wanted to leave. I wanted to go back to my office, where the numbers made sense and respect was earned, not inherited. A sliding door opened behind me. "Hiding?" a voice asked. I turned. It was Clara. She closed the door behind her, shutting out the noise of my parents fawning over Mason. She held 2 glasses of wine, and she extended one to me. "I figured you might need this," she said. I hesitated, then took it. "Thank you." She leaned against the railing next to me, looking out at the manicured lawn. "Your brother," she said, "has a very loud voice." I let out a short, involuntary laugh. "He likes to command the room." "He does," she agreed. She took a sip of wine, then turned her body to face me completely. Her eyes were dark and intelligent, scanning my face with the same intensity I imagined she used when interviewing senators or whistleblowers. "So, tell me the truth," she said. "About what? About your company? Mason calls it a project. Your father calls it a nice little business. But I looked at your numbers. Natalie, you are scaling at 40% quarter over quarter. You have a default rate under 2% in a high-risk sector. That is not luck. That is an algorithm that actually works." I stared at her. The wind was picking up, rustling the leaves of the oak tree. But I felt perfectly still. "Why do you know that?" "Because I am a journalist," she said simply, "and because I was curious about the sister who supposedly needed so much help." "Mason told you I needed help?" "Mason tells me a lot of things," Clara said. She paused, choosing her words carefully. "He is very protective of you. Or at least, that is how he frames it. He thinks I am fragile." I said, "Are you?" "No." Clara nodded. "I didn't think so." She set her wine glass down on the railing. "Listen, Natalie, I am going to be direct with you. This dinner was lovely, and I'm happy to be marrying your brother, but I have an ulterior motive for talking to you tonight." I tightened my grip on my glass. "What is it?" "I am working on a story," she said. "A profile package. Have you heard of The Ledger? It was an elite business magazine, glossy and thick, the kind that sat on the coffee tables of billionaires." "Yes," I said. "Of course. They are doing a special issue. 30 under 30. I shook my head. "I am 33. Clara, I missed that boat." Clara held up a finger. "It is a new angle. 30 under 30 teams. They are profiling founding teams where the average age is under 35. You and your co-founder fit the criteria. I pitched you. I stared at her. You pitched me? Yes. Why? Because your story is interesting, she said. Self-made female founder, mission-driven, fighting the traditional banking system, and… She hesitated, then shrugged. And because I think you deserve the credit, I felt a wave of dizziness. This was the kind of press that changed companies. It was the kind of validation that would shut my father up forever, but something felt off. Mason had just told me not to compete, and now his fiancée was handing me a loaded gun. Why now? I asked. The wedding is in 6 months. Mason just told me to keep a low profile. Mason worries about optics, Clara said. I worry about the truth, and the truth is, you are doing something important. She reached into her purse and pulled out a business card. It was heavy stock, cream-colored. I am writing the piece, she said. It is for the Ledger, but it is being syndicated through Brightwell Media. It is a massive platform. Natalie, I want to interview you, on the record, next week. I looked at the card. Clara Wynne, senior correspondent. Does Mason know? I asked. Clara smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Not yet. I wanted to ask you first. It is your career, not his. I looked back at the house. I could see Mason through the window, gesturing with his drink, holding court. He looked happy. He looked like the king of the world. He had told me I was lucky. He had told me not to embarrass him. I looked back at Clara. Okay, I said. Let's do it. Good, she said. I will email you the details. She picked up her wine glass and clinked it against mine. To family, she said. To family, I replied. And the word tasted like ash. The following Monday, the euphoria of the offer had worn off, replaced by a gnawing anxiety. I sat in my office, staring at the email Clara had sent. It was efficient, professional, location, the Archer Hotel Lounge, time, Tuesday, 2 p.m., topic, origins, capital strategy, future outlook. Ben walked in, closing the door behind him. He looked more serious than usual. We need to talk. He said, What is it? I asked. I just got off the phone with the procurement officer at Miller Logistics. He said, My stomach dropped. Miller Logistics was our biggest pending contract. It was the deal that would secure our next 2 years of runway. They were supposed to sign today. Did they sign? I asked. No, Ben said. They delayed. Indefinitely. Why? Ben sat down in the chair opposite my desk. He rubbed his face with his hands. The guy was weird about it. He wouldn't give a specific reason, but he mentioned that he had a conversation with a mutual contact over the weekend. Someone who raised concerns about our long-term stability. A mutual contact? I asked. Who? He didn't say, but he dropped a name. Vantage Row. The room went silent. The air conditioning hummed. A low, indifferent drone. Vantage Row. Mason's firm. My brother works at Vantage Row. I said quietly. I know. Ben said. That is why I'm telling you. Natalie, is there something going on? Because losing this contract is not a minor bump. It is a crater. I don't know. I said, I honestly don't know. Ben looked at the email open on my screen. The one from Clara. You are doing an interview with his fiancée? Ben asked. She wants to profile us. I said, it is for a 30 under list. It is huge exposure. Ben looked skeptical. A Pulitzer winner wants to write a puff piece about a Series A fintech startup? It is not a puff piece, I defended, though the doubt was creeping in. She is impressed by our metrics. Or, Ben said, his voice low, she is digging. Digging for what? We are clean. Ben, we are cleaner than the banks we compete with. Public attention attracts sharks. Natalie, Ben said, if she starts turning over rocks, she might find things we didn't even know were there. And if your brother's firm is already bad-mouthing us to clients… He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. I spent the rest of the day in a fog. I tried to call the contact at Miller Logistics, but my calls went to voicemail. I sent a text to Mason. Hey, Did you talk to anyone at Miller Logistics lately? He replied 3 hours later. Who? No. Busy day. Dinner next Sunday? I left the office late again. It was raining, a cold, gray drizzle that made the city look melted. I sat in my car in the parking garage, watching the windshield wipers slice back and forth. I felt cornered. On one side, my family, urging me to be small. On the other, a contract disappearing into thin air, seemingly evaporated by the heat of my brother's employer. And in the middle, Clara, offering me a microphone. My phone buzzed. It was a new email. No subject line. The sender was a string of random characters from an encrypted service. I opened it. The message was just one sentence. Ask Clara who funded her last investigation. Then ask your brother who he really works for. I read it twice. Then I read it a third time. The light from the phone screen was bright in the dark car. My heart hammered against my ribs. A slow, heavy thud. I looked at the rearview mirror. My own eyes looked back at me, wide and frightened. Ask Clara who funded her last investigation. Ask your brother who he really works for. I put the phone down on the passenger seat. I didn't know who sent it, but I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't going to cancel the interview. I put the car in reverse and backed out of the spot. If they wanted to play games with my company, with my life, then I was done keeping it simple. I was done being the lucky little sister. I drove out into the rain, the tires hissing against the wet pavement. Tomorrow, I would meet Clara, and I would not just answer questions. I would start asking them. I was not sure I wanted to know the answers, but I knew I could no longer afford to not know them. The game had started, whether I wanted to play or not, and I was tired of losing. The Archer Hotel lounge was designed to make people feel like they had already arrived, even if they were just passing through. The lighting was low and amber. The velvet armchairs were deep enough to swallow you whole, and the air smelled of espresso and expensive leather. It was 2 o'clock on a Tuesday, a time when most honest people were working, but the lounge was populated by men in suits speaking in hushed tones and women who looked like they managed empires from their phones. I spotted Clara Wynne in a corner booth. She was not looking at her phone. She was writing in a physical notebook, her hand moving with a sharp, aggressive rhythm. She wore a cream-colored blouse that looked like silk but was probably something more durable, something that could withstand travel and coffee spills and the grime of digging through other people's trash. I approached the table. My heart was beating a strange, syncopated rhythm against my ribs. The anonymous email I had received the night before, ask Clara who funded her last investigation, felt like a stone in my pocket, heavy and cold. Clara looked up before I even cleared my throat. Her eyes were clear, focused, and completely unreadable. "Natalie," she said, "you are punctual. I like that." I sat down across from her. "Being late is stealing time," I said, "and time is the only asset you can't leverage for a loan." Clara smiled, a quick flicker that vanished as fast as it appeared. She placed a small digital recorder on the table between us. "Do you mind?" she asked. "For accuracy, not at all," I said. She pressed the red button. The tiny light blinked, a single unblinking eye staring at me. "Let's start with the easy stuff," Clara said. She opened a folder on the table. Inside, I saw printouts, not just about my company, Fairline Analytics, but about me. My LinkedIn profile, articles from local business gazettes, even a printout of the dean's list from my sophomore year of college. It was thorough. It was terrifying. "Walk me through the seed round," she said. "You raised $2 million in a pre-seed stage without a lead institutional investor. That is unusual for a fintech founder with no prior exit. How did you do it?" I went into my pitch. It was a speech I had given 100 times. I talked about the gap in the market, the inefficiency of traditional credit scores for micro-businesses, the way our algorithms scraped cash flow data rather than credit history. Clara nodded along, making notes. But I could feel her waiting. She was letting me talk, letting me get comfortable, the way a fisherman lets the line run before snapping it tight. 20 minutes in, she flipped a page in her notebook. The sound was loud in the quiet lounge. "Your growth is impressive," she said. But before you secured that angel funding, you applied for a grant, the Holloway Civic Trust Innovation Award. In 2019. I paused. The name brought a sour taste to my mouth. The Holloway Civic Trust was one of the most prestigious philanthropic organizations in the state. My parents worshipped it. Winning a Holloway grant was like being knighted in our city. Yes, I said. I applied. We were finalists. But you didn't win. Clara said. It wasn't a question. No. I said, we didn't. They went with a different applicant. A company called Greenspire. Right, Clara said. She looked down at her notes. Greenspire. They do supply chain logistics for mid-sized agricultural firms. A solid business. Not exactly mission-driven in the same way you are, but solid. I shrugged, trying to appear indifferent. The committee made their choice. It happens. Do you know who sat on the selection committee that year? Clara asked. Her eyes were locked on mine now. The casual vibe was gone. The air between us felt thin, charged with static. I assume it was the board. I said, it was, Clara said, specifically. The deciding vote was cast by a man named Marcus Vane. Do you know him? The name sounded familiar, but I couldn't place it. No, I don't think so. He is a senior partner at Vantage Row Group. Clara said. I froze. Vantage Row? My brother's firm. He is a colleague of Mason's? I asked, keeping my voice steady. He is Mason's boss's boss. Clara corrected. She leaned forward slightly, and 6 months after Greenspire won that $50,000 grant, they signed a 3-year consulting contract with Vantage Row, worth $400,000. I stared at her. The numbers hung in the air. 50,000 out, 400,000 in. That is a coincidence, I said. My voice sounded weak. Even to me. Vantage Row is a huge firm. They work with thousands of companies. Clara ignored my defense. She flipped another page. In 2020, the Holloway Civic Trust gave their Arts Culture grant to a nonprofit theater group. 3 months later, that theater group hired Vantage Row to handle their capital campaign strategy. In 2021, the trust gave its Community Leader Award to a construction firm. That firm is now Vantage Row's primary contractor for their new headquarters. She looked up at me. The look on her face was not hostile. It was almost clinical. She was dissecting a cadaver, and she wanted me to see the pathology. I am not writing a profile about 30 founders under 30. Natalie, she said softly. Well, I am. But that is the Trojan horse. What are you writing? I asked. I am mapping an ecosystem, she said. I am tracking how philanthropic foundations are being used as lead generation tools by for-profit consulting firms. It is a cycle. The foundation gives an award to clean a company's reputation or give them prestige. That company then hires the consulting firm, Vantage Row, as a thank you. It is a kickback scheme dressed up in tuxedos and charity galas. I sat back in the deep velvet chair. My hands were cold. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Mason works for them. You are marrying him. Clara looked down at her engagement ring. The diamond caught the low light, fracturing it into tiny rainbows. I love your brother, she said. I do. He is charming, and he makes me laugh, and he feels like safety. But I am a journalist before I am a wife, and if Vantage Row is corrupt, I need to know how deep it goes. She looked back at me, and I need to know if Mason is part of it, or if he is just another person they have charmed. I thought of Mason at the dinner party. Don't compete. Keep it simple. Was he protecting me from the sharks? Or was he hiding the fact that he was swimming with them? He just got promoted. I said, to the regional office. I know, Clara said. And your parents? They have been trying to get on the Holloway board for years, haven't they? I nodded. My mother donated to the silent auction every year. My father played golf with the trustees. They wanted that social cachet more than they wanted oxygen. Natalie, Clara said, her voice dropping lower. Did Marcus Vane ever reach out to you? After he rejected your grant? No. I said, did anyone from Vantage Row offer to help you with your application? To review your deck? To make introductions? I shook my head. No, I did it all myself. Clara studied me for a long moment. Then she asked a question that felt like a physical blow. Did you ever take money you didn't understand? I blinked. What? Early funding, she said. Angel investors, friends and family. Did anyone give you a check that felt too easy? Did anyone ask for board seats or advisor roles that seemed out of proportion to their investment? The memory surfaced instantly. It was 3 years ago. I was desperate. We had 2 weeks of payroll left. A man had approached me at a networking mixer. He was polished, vague, and incredibly eager. There was one. I said slowly, a guy named Ellery. He offered me $50,000. He said he loved the mission. He didn't even look at the PL statement. And? Clara asked. And I sent him the term sheet. I said, but he sent back his own version. He wanted a clause that gave him veto power over future partnerships. He wanted the right to approve our vendors. What did you do? I tore it up. I said, I told him we weren't interested. I put the $50,000 on 3 personal credit cards instead. It took me 2 years to pay off the interest. Clara let out a breath she seemed to have been holding. Her shoulders relaxed. Just a fraction. Good, she said. That is good. Why? I asked. Who was Ellery? He is a fixer, Clara said. He moves money for people who don't want their names on the checks. If you had taken that money, Natalie, you would be owned by them right now. You would be part of the portfolio. She reached out and turned off the recorder. The red eye went dark. You are clean, she said. That is what I needed to know. You were testing me. I said, you didn't just want my story. You wanted to see if I was compromised. I had to be sure, she said. And if I had been? If I had taken the money? Then this would be a very different conversation, she said, and a very different article. I looked at this woman, this stranger who was about to become my sister-in-law. She was terrifying. She was dissecting my life, my family, and my business with a scalpel, looking for rot. And yet, beneath the terror, I felt a strange flicker of respect. She was doing her job. She was looking for the truth, even if it hurt. I have a question for you, I said. Clara nodded. Go ahead. I remembered the anonymous email. Ask Clara who funded her last investigation. Your Pulitzer, I said. The water investigation. Who funded the fellowship that allowed you to take 6 months off to report it? Clara's expression didn't change, but her fingers tightened slightly on her pen. It was the Center for Public Integrity and Journalism, she said. A standard grant. Who funds the center? I asked. A mix of donors. She said, why? I just wondered. I said, in this ecosystem you are mapping, does the money ever flow the other way? Do they ever fund the people who are supposed to be watching them? Clara stared at me. For the first time, I saw a crack in the armor. A shadow of doubt passed behind her eyes. I vetted them, she said. Her voice was sharp, defensive. I vetted the donor list. It was clean. I am sure it was. I said, just like the Holloway Civic Trust is clean on paper. Clara didn't answer. She looked down at her notebook, then closed it with a snap. We should stop for today, she said. I have enough for the profile draft. She gathered her things quickly. The interview was over, but as she stood up, she looked at me again, and the mask slipped. She looked tired. She looked worried. I didn't expect to like you. Natalie, she said, I thought you would be malleable, like your parents. I stood up too. I didn't expect you to see me. I said, I thought you would just see Mason's little sister. Clara grimaced, a small, wry twisting of her lips. I think we are both finding out that things are not what we were told. She walked away, her heels clicking on the marble floor, leaving me alone in the amber light. I didn't hear from Mason for 2 days. I assumed he was busy, or that Clara hadn't told him about the depth of our conversation. I was wrong. He caught me on Thursday night. I was leaving my office building, walking toward the parking garage. The streetlights were humming, casting long, distorted shadows on the concrete. Natalie! I turned. Mason was standing by his car, a sleek black sedan that cost more than my parents' first house. He was wearing his suit, but his tie was loosened, and his hair was slightly disheveled. He looked like a man who had been running. Mason! I said, "What are you doing here?" "Get in the car," he said. "I'm going to my car." "Mason, I am tired. Just get in the damn car." "Natalie," he shouted. The sound of his voice echoed off the concrete walls. I froze. Mason never shouted. Mason was the diplomat, the charmer, the golden boy. He didn't shout because he never had to. I walked over to him slowly. "I am not getting in the car." "Mason, but I will talk to you here." He ran a hand through his hair. He looked at me, his eyes bloodshot. "Why did you meet with her?" he asked. His voice was lower now, trembling with suppressed rage. "She asked for an interview." I said, "She is writing a piece about founders. I told you to keep it simple." He hissed. "I told you not to get involved in her work. Clara is intense, Natalie. She destroys people for a living. She is your fiancée." I said, "You talk about her like she is a weapon, because she is." He said, "She is a guided missile, and you just painted a target on your back." "What did you tell her?" "I told her about the company." I kept it vague. "I told her about our mission." "Did you talk about the grant?" he asked. "The Holloway grant?" I felt a cold chill slide down my spine. I hadn't told him about that part of the conversation. She asked about it. I said, "It is public record." "Mason, God damn it," Mason whispered. He kicked the tire of his car. A violent, impotent gesture. "She is looking for connections. Natalie. She is obsessed with these conspiracy theories about Vantage Row. She thinks everything is a plot." "Is it?" I asked. He whipped his head around to look at me. "Don't be stupid. It is business. It is how the world works. Relationships, networks. You help people, they help you. That isn't a crime." "Natalie, that is capitalism." "Then why are you so scared?" I asked. "I am not scared," he snapped. "I am protecting you. If she writes something, if she implies that Vantage Row is dirty, do you know what that does to me? I just got regional director. I am finally at the table. Natalie, I am finally making the kind of money that matters." He grabbed my shoulders. His grip was painful. "Listen to me. You need to call her. You need to tell her you want to retract the interview. Tell her you are not comfortable being profiled. Make up an excuse. Say your board won't allow it." "I can't do that." I said, "She has it on tape." "Then fix it," he said. He leaned in close, his breath hot on my face. "Don't let her interview turn into an audit. Natalie, do you hear me? We cannot afford an audit right now." He realized what he said the moment the words left his mouth. He released me and stepped back, his face draining of color. "An audit?" I repeated. "Who is we? Mason? You and the firm? Or you and Mom and Dad?" He shook his head, backing toward the driver's door. "Just stay out of it. Natalie, stick to your little loans. Leave the real world to the adults." He got in the car and slammed the door. He peeled out of the garage, the tires squealing, leaving the smell of burnt rubber in the air. I stood there for a long time. Don't let her interview turn into an audit. It was an admission of guilt. He knew. He knew about the kickbacks. He knew about the Holloway Trust, and he was terrified that Clara was going to find out. I went back up to my office. I couldn't go home. I needed the safety of my data. Ben was still there, hunched over his dual monitors. He looked up when I walked in. "I thought you left," he said. "I came back." I said, "I sat down at my desk and woke up my computer. Ben, I need you to run a search." "On what?" "On the Holloway Civic Trust. I want to know every grant they have given in the last 5 years, and I want to know where those companies ended up." Ben looked at me, seeing the look on my face. He didn't ask questions. He just started typing. While he worked, I pulled up the old rejection letter from the Holloway Trust. I found the list of board members from 2019. Marcus Vane. I searched for him. LinkedIn showed a polished headshot. Senior partner, Vantage Row Group, board member, Holloway Civic Trust. Advisor, City Revitalizations Project. Then I searched for the Workplace Advisory Council at Vantage Row, the internal board that Mason had bragged about joining last month. There it was. A press release. Vantage Row announces new internal advisory council to mentor regional leadership. The chair of the council was Marcus Vane. The man who killed my grant was the man mentoring my brother, Natalie. Ben said. His voice was tight. I spun my chair around. What is it? I wasn't looking at the trust. Ben said, I was looking at our banking portal. I tried to run the weekly batch transfer for the new loans, and it was flagged. Ben said, transaction hold, risk assessment pending. What does that mean? I stood up and walked over to his desk. I called the bank's after-hours line. Ben said, they said our entity has been flagged in a third-party risk database, WorldCheck or something similar. It says we are under investigation for financial irregularities. That is a lie. I said, we are audited annually. We are squeaky clean. I asked them where the flag came from. Ben said, they wouldn't give me the specific source, but the code on the screen, look. He pointed to a string of alphanumeric characters in the error log. VR-RM-774. I don't know what that means. I said, I Googled it. Ben said, it is a vendor code. VR Reputation Management. It is a subsidiary of a larger holding company. Let me guess, I said, feeling the bile rise in my throat. Vantage Row? Ben nodded. Natalie, they are choking us. If we can't deploy capital, we are in breach of our contracts with the small businesses. If this hold lasts more than a week, we are insolvent. They are trying to kill the company, I whispered. Mason's warning echoed in my head. Don't let her interview turn into an audit. He wasn't just warning me. He was threatening me. Or someone he worked for was, we need to fix this. Ben said, we need a lawyer. No. I said, a lawyer will take weeks. We don't have weeks. I looked at the screen, at the red error message that was slowly strangling everything I had built for the last 5 years. I went back to my desk. I opened my email. There was a new message from Clara. The subject line was profile draft, follow-up questions. I opened it. It was a standard list of questions. Clarify revenue projections for Q4. Confirm number of full-time employees. But at the bottom, in white text that I only saw because I highlighted the whole document to copy it, was a single line. Your brother is either a pawn or a co-author. I am sending you a timeline. Do not open it on a work computer. I stared at the hidden text. Clara knew. She knew they were coming for me, and she was giving me a choice. I could be the loyal sister and let my company burn to protect Mason's secrets, or I could open the timeline, see the truth, and burn the whole family down to save myself. I took out my personal phone. I disconnected from the office Wi-Fi. I opened the attachment. The timeline wasn't just a list of dates. It was a map of corruption that spanned a decade, and right in the middle of it, starting 3 years ago, was my brother's name. He wasn't a pawn. He was the architect of the local chapter. I looked at Ben. Print everything. I said, every loan, every repayment, every audit we have ever passed. Why? Ben asked. Because we are going to war. I said, and I'm going to need ammunition. The rain hammered against the office windows, sounding like applause from a crowd that wanted blood. I thought of Mason's smile at the dinner table. I really hit the jackpot. Didn't I? Yes, brother, you did. You just didn't realize that the prize you won was going to be the one to expose you, and neither did I. I picked up the phone and typed a reply to Clara. I am ready to talk about the grant. I hit send, and then, for the first time in years, I didn't feel like the little sister anymore. I felt like the CEO, and I was about to fire my own family. The phone felt heavy in my hand, like a physical weight rather than a piece of technology. I was standing in the supply closet of my office, surrounded by stacks of printer paper and boxes of toner, because it was the only room where the glass walls of our open-plan workspace could not betray me. I was calling Elias Thorne. He was 70 years old, a retired ethics professor who had served on half a dozen nonprofit boards in the city before retreating to a cabin upstate. He was the only person I knew who understood the architecture of philanthropy, but no longer relied on it for his survival. He answered on the fourth ring, his voice raspy. Natalie, he said, it has been a long time. I need to ask you about the Holloway Civic Trust. Elias, I said. The line went silent. I could hear the wind blowing against his phone receiver. A hollow, lonely sound. Why? He asked finally. Because I think they are coming after my company, I said, and because my brother is marrying into their orbit. Natalie, listen to me very carefully. Elias said, the Holloway Trust is not a charity. It is a machine. It is a mechanism for converting tax-exempt dollars into political favors. I know that part. I said, I need to know how they operate when they are threatened. They do not get threatened. Elias said, they get efficient. If you are asking questions, or if you are standing in the way of a preferred outcome, you do not get sued. That is too messy. You just get erased. Erased? Opportunities disappear. He said, loans get flagged. Permits get lost in City Hall. Mentors stop returning calls. It is a quiet strangulation. I served on a committee for them 10 years ago. I raised a concern about a grant going to a shell company. 2 weeks later, the university canceled my tenure review. I felt a cold sweat prickle the back of my neck. How do I fight them? I asked. You don't, Elias said. You apologize. You kiss the ring, or you leave the city. Those are the options. He hung up without saying goodbye. 2 nights later, I found myself walking into the Lion's Den. The Holloway Civic Trust annual gala was held at the Museum of Fine Arts. The tickets cost $5,000 a plate, but my parents had insisted I attend. They had bought a table. They wanted the whole family there, Mason, Clara, and me, to present a united, successful front. I wore a black dress that felt like armor. My hair was pulled back tight. I walked into the great hall, which was bathed in blue light and smelled of lilies and money. My parents were already there, holding court near the ice sculpture. My father was wearing a tuxedo that was slightly too tight across the chest, and my mother was dripping in diamonds that I knew were insured for more than my car. Natalie! My mother cried, waving me over. She kissed the air next to my cheek. You look severe, but elegant. Where is Mason? I asked. He is working the room, my father said, beaming. He has been introduced to 3 state senators already. Vantage Row is making a big push this year. I looked around the room. It was a sea of power. I saw the mayor. I saw the CEO of the largest hospital system, and I saw Marcus Vane, the man who had killed my grant, the man who mentored my brother, was standing near the bar, holding court. He was tall, silver-haired, with the kind of face that belonged on currency. He was talking to a woman I recognized, the CEO of a massive construction firm. I told my parents I was going to get a drink and slipped away. I didn't go to the bar. I circled around the perimeter of the room, moving behind a large pillar near where Vane was standing. I pretended to be checking my phone, but I focused every ounce of my attention on his voice. The timing is tight. Marcus, the woman was saying, we need the environmental clearance by next month if we are going to break ground. Don't worry about the clearance, Vane said. His voice was smooth, like poured oil. The Community Impact Award is going to the head of the zoning board next week. Is that confirmed? She asked. It is allocated, Vane corrected. He understands the nature of the honor, and he understands that our partners need agility. Once he accepts the award, and the $25,000 stipend that comes with it, he will be very motivated to ensure the city is open for business. I felt sick. It was exactly what Clara had said. The awards were bribes. They were down payments on corruption. And what about the Collins boy? The woman asked. I held my breath. Mason is useful, Vane said. He is hungry. He wants to belong so badly he doesn't ask where the meat comes from. We are positioning him to handle the optics on the new healthcare contracts. If anything goes wrong, he is the face on the brochure. He is the fall guy, the woman said, laughing softly. He is a team player, Vane said. I stepped back, my heels silent on the carpet. My heart was hammering so hard, I thought it would crack a rib. Mason wasn't just a part of it. He was the insulation. He was the disposable layer they would burn through to protect themselves. I found Clara near the entrance to the sculpture garden. She looked stunning in a red dress, but her face was pale. She was clutching her clutch bag like a weapon. "Did you hear anything?" she whispered when I reached her. "They are buying the zoning board." I said, "And they are setting Mason up." Vane called him useful. He said if anything goes wrong, Mason is the face on the brochure. Clara closed her eyes for a second. "God, we have to tell him." I said, "He won't believe us." Clara said, "He is drunk on the Kool-Aid." "Natalie, he thinks he is inside the circle. He doesn't realize he is just the waiter." She grabbed my arm and pulled me into the shadows of the garden. "I have something to show you," she said. She pulled a folded piece of paper from her bag. It was a timeline, printed in small font, with names redacted in black marker. "Look at this," she said. I squinted in the dim light. It was a list of companies. 2018, Clara said, pointing to a line. This founder criticized the trust's lack of diversity in an op-ed. 3 weeks later, his business line of credit was revoked. 2019. This woman refused to hire a Vantage Row consultant. Her factory was hit with 4 surprise OSHA inspections in a month. She went bankrupt. I looked at the bottom of the list. 2024, Fairline Analytics, my company. The pattern matches, Clara said. The risk flag on your account? The contract delay? It is the playbook. Natalie, they are squeezing you because you are asking questions, or because they know I am asking questions, and you are the leverage they can use against me. I looked at the timeline. It wasn't just bad luck. It was a hit list. I went back inside the gala, my head spinning. I found Mason near the dessert table. He was laughing with a group of men in suits. He looked flushed, happy, victorious. "Mason," I said, grabbing his elbow, "we need to leave." "Not now." "Natalie," he said, shaking me off, "I am talking to the vice president of—" "I don't care," I hissed. "They are using you." "Mason." I heard Vane. Mason's smile vanished. He grabbed my arm and steered me forcibly away from the group, into a quiet corridor near the restrooms. "Stop it," he said. His voice was low and vicious. "You are embarrassing me. They called you a face on a brochure." "Mason," I said. "They are setting you up to take the fall for the healthcare contracts." "You are hysterical," he said. I stared at him. "What?" "You are stressed." "Natalie, Mom and Dad told me about the business. They told me you are having cash flow problems, that you are paranoid." I took a step back. "You told them?" "I had to explain why you were acting so crazy." He said, "I told them you were under a lot of pressure and that your little startup was on the rocks. I told them I was handling it, that I was protecting you." "Protecting me?" I choked out. "By telling our parents I'm a failure? By controlling the narrative?" Mason shouted, then lowered his voice as a waiter walked by. "Look, Natalie, you are drowning. I can see it. You are inventing conspiracies because you can't handle the fact that business is hard. Vane likes me. He respects me. He gave me this opportunity because I earned it. He respects your signature on the liability forms." I said. Mason straightened his jacket. "Go home, Natalie. Go home and take a Xanax. I will tell Mom and Dad you had a migraine." He walked back toward the party, back toward the light and the music, and the people who were planning his destruction. The attack came 2 days later. It was Tuesday morning. I was in a meeting with my engineering lead when the receptionist knocked on the glass door. She looked terrified. "Natalie," she said, "there are people here." I walked out to the lobby. 2 men and a woman were standing there. They wore gray suits and carried leather briefcases. They didn't look like clients. They looked like executioners. "Natalie Collins?" the woman asked. She held up a badge. "State Department of Financial Regulation. We are here to conduct a compliance audit." I felt the floor tilt. "We were audited 4 months ago." I said, "We passed with flying colors. We received a credible tip regarding potential violations of the Fair Lending Act," the woman said. "Specifically regarding undisclosed conflicts of interest and data manipulation. We need access to your servers. Now." They didn't wait for permission. They marched into the server room. They demanded passwords. They seized laptops. For 6 hours. My office was a war zone. My employees sat at their desks, silent and scared. Ben was pale. pacing back and forth in the break room. I sat in the conference room with the lead auditor, the woman in the gray suit. Her name was Agent Miller. She opened a file. "Tell me about your relationship with the Holloway Civic Trust," she said. I stared at her. "What does that have to do with fair lending? We have reports that you attempted to use philanthropic channels to secure preferential banking terms." She said, "That is a lie." I said, "I applied for a grant. I lost. And your brother's employment at Vantage Row," she asked. "Do you disclose that relationship to your clients?" "Why would I asked. "We are separate entities." "Is it true that you share proprietary data with him?" she asked, "to help him with his consulting work?" "No," I shouted. "I have never shared data with him." Agent Miller wrote something down in her notebook. She didn't look convinced. The questions went on. And as she asked them, I realized something terrifying. These weren't random questions. These were the specific questions Clara had been asking me. The audit was mirroring the investigation. Someone knew what Clara was looking for, and they were projecting those sins onto me. They were framing me for the exact corruption they were guilty of. When they finally left at 5 o'clock, they took 3 hard drives and told me I was not allowed to leave the state. I sat in my ruined office. The silence was deafening. I drove to Mason's apartment. I didn't call first. I buzzed his unit until he answered. "Let me in," I said. He opened the door a minute later. He was in sweatpants and a t-shirt, looking exhausted. "What happened?" he asked. "You look like you saw a ghost." "They raided my office. Mason, the state regulators. They accused me of sharing data with you." Mason's face went white. He stepped back, letting me into the living room. "What did you tell them?" he asked. "I told them the truth," I screamed, "that I have never given you a damn thing." Mason sank onto his leather sofa. He put his head in his hands. "Mason, look at me. What is going on? Did you tell Vane about Clara's investigation?" "No." He said, "I swear." "Then how do they know? How do they know exactly what questions to ask to hurt me?" Mason looked up. His eyes were wet. "I signed some things," he whispered. "What things?" "Internal compliance documents," he said. "When I got the promotion, they said it was standard. Client protection agreements, NDAs. But there was a clause about family conflicts. I had to list your company. I had to list what you did. And I might have embellished," he said, "to make myself look better. I might have said we had a strategic alignment, that I had access to your market insights. I wanted to look plugged in. Natalie, I wanted to look like I controlled the fintech space in the city." I stared at him. The betrayal was so absolute I couldn't even feel it. It was just a numbness spreading through my limbs. "You lied." I said, "You lied to your bosses to get a promotion, and now they are using that lie to destroy my company. I didn't think they would use it," Mason pleaded. "I thought it was just paperwork." I stood up. "You have to fix this. Mason, you have to go to Vane. You have to tell him you lied. You have to tell him I am innocent." "I can't," he said. "Why not?" "Because if I admit I lied on a compliance form, I lose my license. Natalie, I lose my job. I lose the house. I lose—" He gestured to the air. "Everything. I lose Clara. You are going to lose her anyway." I said, "When she finds out who you really are." He stood up, his face hardening. "She won't find out. Unless you tell her. Are you threatening me?" "I am telling you the reality," Mason said. "If you go down, it is a business failure. You can start over. If I go down, it is fraud. I go to jail. Do you want your brother in jail?" "Natalie?" I looked at him. I saw the fear, but I also saw the selfishness, the absolute, rot-filled selfishness that had been hiding under his charm for 30 years. "I don't know who you are," I said. I walked out. I met Clara at a diner on the edge of town. It was the only place I felt safe. I ordered coffee I couldn't drink. They raided me. I said, "I heard." Clara said, "It is on the police scanner. Mason did it." I said, I told her everything, the compliance forms, the lies, the way he sold me out to look important. Clara didn't look surprised. She looked sad. "He is weak," She said, I knew he was ambitious. I didn't know he was weak. We need evidence, Clara said. Real evidence, not just timelines and coincidences. We need the internal emails from Vantage Row. We need the proof that they ordered the hit on your company. I can't get that. I said, Mason has it. Clara said, he has a laptop. He has a login. You want me to steal his password? I asked. I want you to get access. Clara said, he trusts you. He thinks he bullied you into silence. I am not a thief. Clara, you are a casualty. Clara snapped. They are actively dismantling your life. Natalie, truth sometimes requires discomfort. It requires getting your hands dirty. I looked at her. Her eyes were burning with a zealous light. She was ready to burn Mason down. She was ready to burn everything down. And then, I remembered the question I had asked her in the hotel. Clara, I said, did you check the funding? She froze. The coffee cup stopped halfway to her mouth. What? The fellowship. I said, the one that paid for your water investigation? Did you check it? Clara put the cup down slowly. I did, she said. Her voice was hollow. And? It was a pass-through, she whispered. The money came from a donor-advised fund. I traced the fund manager. She reached into her purse and pulled out a single sheet of paper. She slid it across the table. The fund manager was a man named Richard Greaves. I know that name. I said, he is the CFO of Vantage Row. Clara nodded. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Vantage Row paid for my investigation. She said, the water scandal. The company I exposed. They were Vantage Row's biggest competitor in the public utility sector. After my story broke, the competitor's stock tanked. Vantage Row bought their assets for pennies on the dollar. She covered her face with her hands. I wasn't a journalist, she said. I was a hitman. I was a weapon they pointed at their enemies. Everything I built my reputation. My prize? It is all fruit of the poisonous tree. I reached across the table and took her hand. It was trembling. So we are both pawns, I said. Clara looked up. Her eyes were red, but the sadness was replaced by a cold, terrifying fury. No, she said. A pawn is a piece that gets sacrificed. I am not going to be sacrificed. Natalie, I am going to be the hand that knocks the board over. She took a breath. But we can't just yell about it. They control the narrative. They control the banks. They control the regulators. If we go public now, they will crush you with the audit and they will discredit me as a hysterical woman trying to sabotage her fiancé. So what do we do? I asked. We protect you first. She said, you need a lawyer, a shark, someone who scares them. I made the calls the next morning. I drained my personal savings account. I hired the most expensive ethics attorney in the city, a woman named Catherine Reed, and I hired a crisis PR consultant recommended by Ben, a man who specialized in reputation defense. I met them in Catherine's high-rise conference room. The view was spectacular. The city looked clean from up here. Catherine listened to my story. She looked at the audit demands. It is aggressive, she admitted, but manageable. We will file an injunction. We will slow them down. Thank you, I said. I felt a glimmer of hope, and then the door opened. The PR consultant walked in. He was smiling, holding a tray of coffees. Sorry I'm late, he said. I was on a call with the gala committee. I froze. Which gala committee? The Holloway Trust, he said casually. I handle their event comms every year. Great group of people. I looked at Catherine. She didn't blink. You work for them? I asked. We all do pro bono work for the trust. Natalie, Catherine said smoothly, it is a civic duty. They are the pillar of our community. I looked from Catherine to the PR man. I saw the polite smiles. I saw the unspoken connections. There was no outside. I hadn't hired a defense team. I had just walked into another room of the same prison. I looked at the window. The city didn't look clean anymore. It looked like a web. I stood up. I think I need to use the restroom, I said. I walked out of the conference room. I walked past the receptionist. I walked to the elevator. I hit the lobby button. I was alone. Mason was gone. My parents were gone. My lawyer was compromised. I took out my phone and texted Clara. They are all connected. The lawyer, the PR, everyone. We are on our own. I walked out onto the street. The wind was cold. I buttoned my blazer. If they wanted a fight, they were going to get one, but I wasn't going to fight like a CEO anymore. I was going to fight like a sister who had nothing left to lose. I stood on the sidewalk outside the glass tower, the wind whipping my hair across my face. I pulled out my phone and typed a 3-line email to Catherine Reed and the reputation management consultant. I told them their services were no longer required effective immediately, and that any further communication with the Holloway Civic Trust regarding my affairs would be considered a breach of attorney-client privilege. I did not wait for a reply. I blocked their numbers. I needed a lawyer who did not have a summer home in the Hamptons or a standing tea time with my brother's boss. I called Ben. I need a name. I said, someone who hates the establishment, someone who loses sleep over it. Ben gave me a name. Saul Imran. Saul's office was in a converted warehouse district that smelled of roasted coffee and diesel fumes. There was no receptionist, just a heavy steel door with a buzzer. When I walked in, I saw stacks of file boxes that looked like they were load-bearing walls. Saul was a small man with chaotic gray hair and a stained cardigan. Sitting behind a desk buried under paper, he listened to me for 40 minutes without interrupting. He took notes with a fountain pen that scratched aggressively against the yellow legal pad. "You are in a dangerous position, Natalie," he said finally. His voice was gravelly. "You have fired the gatekeepers. That means the gates are now open. They were already open." I said, "They raided my office. That was a warning shot." Saul said, "A compliance audit is a nuisance. What comes next is litigation. Defamation suits, tortious interference. If you go public with accusations about the Holloway Trust without absolute, irrefutable documentary proof, they will bury you. I have a journalist." I said, "Journalists are great for public opinion." Saul said, "They are useless in a deposition. You need to document every conversation, every email, every time your brother sneezes in your direction. You write down the time and the velocity. Do not speak to the press unless you are ready to burn your life down." "I am ready," I said. Saul looked at me over his spectacles. "We will see." He said, "Retain me. $1. I handed him a crumpled dollar bill from my pocket. "Now," he said, "get out of here and don't say anything to anyone that you would not want read aloud by a judge." 2 days later, Clara came to my apartment. She looked like she hadn't slept in a week. Her eyes were rimmed with red, but they burned with a feverish intensity. She placed a thick manila envelope on my kitchen counter. "I got a packet," she said. "From who?" "A whistleblower." She said, "Someone inside the Trust's grant administration office. They used an encrypted Dropbox. Look at page 4. I opened the envelope. It was a memo, dated 3 years ago. The subject line was Vendor Optimization Strategy. I read the highlighted paragraph. Grant recipients should be evaluated not only on mission alignment, but on their potential for future service integration with key donor partners. Priority should be given to entities that demonstrate a willingness to utilize preferred vendor networks. I looked up at Clara. "Preferred vendor networks," I repeated. "It means Vantage Row," Clara said. "It is a farm league. Natalie, they use the trust to scout companies. They give them an award, make them feel special, and then steer them into contracts with Vantage Row clients. If the companies play ball, they get more funding. If they don't, they get starved out. It is a supply chain." I said, "They are farming entrepreneurs. And look at the next page." Clara said, "It was a list of high-potential targets." My name was on a list from 4 years ago. Next to it was a handwritten note. "Monitor, brother in network, potential leverage point." I felt a cold nausea settle in my stomach. They were watching me before I even applied for the grant. I whispered, "Because of Mason," Clara said. "They knew he was hungry. They knew he would bring you into the fold eventually." The realization hit me hard. I wasn't just a random casualty. I was a resource they had been waiting to harvest. The weekend brought the Women of Influence brunch. It was one of the pre-wedding events my mother had insisted upon. It was held at the River Club, a venue that required a membership just to park in the lot. The room was decorated in pastel pinks and creams, filled with women in fascinators and pearls. I was the host. That was my punishment for the dinner party, and my penance for the stress Mason had told everyone I was under. I had to stand at the door and greet the guests. Smiling until my face hurt, Clara arrived late. She wore a white dress that looked like armor. She stood next to me, her smile tight and artificial. "This feels like a trap," I muttered under my breath. "It is a trap," Clara whispered back. "Look who is at table 3. I looked. Sitting next to my mother was Mrs. Eleanor Caldwell. She was one of the biggest donors to the Holloway Trust. Her husband owned a pharmaceutical empire that Vantage Row consulted for. I walked over to the table. My mother beamed at me, a nervous, desperate smile. "Natalie!" she cried. "You know Eleanor." Mrs. Caldwell looked me up and down. She had eyes like a hawk, sharp and predatory. "The famous sister," Mrs. Caldwell said. "Mason speaks so highly of you. He says you are quite the firecracker." "I try to keep busy," I said. "You know," Mrs. Caldwell said, leaning back in her chair. "We were just talking about your little company." "Fairline, is it?" "Yes," I said. "It sounds fascinating," she said. "But scaling a fintech company is so expensive. The capital requirements are brutal. They are significant." I agreed. Mrs. Caldwell took a sip of her mimosa. "You know, the trust has a special initiative for female founders," she said. "We are looking for women who understand how the real world works, women who are willing to play ball." The phrase hung in the air. Play ball. "We have a coalition," she continued, "a curated group of founders. We provide capital, connections, regulatory guidance. But we need to know that our partners are aligned with our values, that they are team players." She looked at me, and her meaning was perfectly clear. "Join us. Stop asking questions. Let us own you, and we will make your problems with the audit go away." I smiled. A cold, hard smile. "I appreciate the offer, Mrs. Caldwell," I said, "but I prefer to stay independent. I find that teams often have rules that don't make it into the rulebook." Mrs. Caldwell's smile didn't waver, but her eyes went cold. "Independence is a luxury, my dear," she said. "Most people can't afford it, especially when the market turns against them." She turned back to my mother. "Your daughter is spirited. Joyce, I hope she doesn't break anything valuable." My mother looked terrified. She reached for her water glass, and her hand was shaking. I walked away. I felt like I was covered in slime. They were not just corrupt. They were arrogant. They thought they could buy me with a brunch and a vague threat. After the brunch, everyone went back to my parents' house for coffee. I didn't want to go, but I needed to find Mason. I needed to see his face when I told him I knew about the leverage point note. The house was full of people. I slipped into my father's study to breathe. The desk was covered in papers. My father was old school. He printed everything. There were invoices for the wedding, catering menus, and a stack of documents Mason had left there earlier. I shouldn't have looked. Saul had told me to document everything, but he hadn't told me to snoop. But the top page caught my eye. It was a slide deck with the Vantage Row logo. Strategic Growth Initiatives, Q3. I flipped the page. Asset Leverage, Family Network Connections. And there it was. Slide 12. Fairline Analytics, Strategic Affiliate. Description: proprietary access to underbanked credit data via familial relationship. Shared insights on risk modeling and community lending patterns. Potential for future acquisition or white label integration. I stopped breathing. Strategic Affiliate. He hadn't just lied on a compliance form. He had pitched my company as an asset. He had told his bosses that I was already in the fold, that my data was their data, that I was just a branch of the Vantage Row tree. I took the deck. My hands were trembling so hard I almost dropped it. I walked out of the study and into the living room. My parents were sitting on the sofa, drinking coffee. Mason was outside on the patio, smoking a cigar with my father's friends. I threw the deck on the coffee table. It landed with a heavy slap. Joyce jumped. "Natalie? What is wrong?" I pointed at the slide. "Did you know?" I asked. My father looked at the paper. He squinted, putting on his reading glasses. "Strategic affiliate," he read. "What does that mean?" "It means Mason sold me," I said. My voice was rising, cracking with the pressure of weeks of silence. "It means he told his company that he owns mine, that he has access to my data, that I am just a resource for him to plunder." My mother looked at the paper, then at me. She didn't look surprised enough. "Natalie, keep your voice down," she hissed. "The guests." "To hell with the guests," I shouted. "Did you know?" My father took off his glasses. He looked old. Suddenly, incredibly old. "Mason said it was just for show," he said quietly. I stared at him. "Just for show?" "He said he needed to demonstrate his network." My father said, "He said it wouldn't hurt you, that it was just a way to get the partners to take him seriously. He said it might even help you, that if Vantage Row was interested, they might invest." "And you let him?" I asked. "You let him lie about my life's work? We wanted him to succeed." "Natalie!" my mother cried. She stood up, tears streaming down her face. "He has worked so hard, and you were always so independent. You didn't need us. Mason needed us." I looked at them. I saw the truth in their eyes. It wasn't malice. It was weakness. It was a lifetime of small compromises. "And what did you get for it?" I asked. "What did the trust give you for looking the other way?" My father looked down at his hands. "They got me the membership at the River Club," he whispered. "They got your mother on the gala committee. They introduced us to people. Natalie. People we never could have met on our own. For a golf membership." I said, "You sold me out for a golf membership." "It wasn't like that." My mother sobbed. "We just wanted everyone to be happy." I looked at the slide deck again. Proprietary access. I walked to the patio door and slid it open. Mason turned. He saw the look on my face. He saw the deck in my hand. He dropped his cigar. "Excuse me. Gentlemen," he said to the men. He walked over to me. His face was a mask of panic. "Where did you get that?" he asked. I held it up. "Strategic affiliate. Mason? Shared insights? Natalie, listen, you stole my work." I said, "You stole my reputation, and you used it to buy yourself a corner office." I dragged him inside, away from the guests. "Tell me the truth." I said, "Or so help me God. I will walk out there and read this slide to Mrs. Caldwell." Mason looked at our parents, who were weeping on the sofa. He looked at the deck. "I didn't steal it," he said. "I borrowed it." "Borrowed it?" "I ghost wrote some pieces," he said. His voice was fast, desperate. The partners needed thought leadership articles about fintech, about the underbanked. "I used some of your research, the stuff you talked about at dinner, the trends you mentioned. You published my data under someone else's name?" I asked. "It was just concepts," he said. "It wasn't raw data. It was family sharing. Natalie, we are family. What is mine is yours." "No," I said. "What is yours is a lie, and what is mine is about to be gone because of you." I threw the deck at his chest. "The auditors think I'm sharing data because you told them I was." I said, "You created the paper trail that is hanging me." "I can fix it," Mason said. "I can talk to Vane. I can tell him it was a misunderstanding." "You can't talk to Vane," I said. "Vane is the one who ordered the audit. Vane is the one who put you up to this. Don't you see? You aren't the player. Mason, you are the pawn. They used you to get to me, and now that they have me, they are going to discard you." Mason shook his head. "No, they respect me." I looked at my brother. I saw the fear behind his eyes. He knew, deep down. He knew. "Fix it," I said, "or I will." I turned and walked out of the house. I didn't say goodbye to my parents. I didn't care about the guests. I walked to my car, shaking with a rage that felt cold and hard and permanent. I drove straight to Clara's apartment. She opened the door, wearing sweatpants and a t-shirt. She took one look at my face and stepped aside. "I found it," I said. I told her about the deck. I told her about the parents. I told her about the ghostwriting. Clara listened, her face grim. He is worse than I thought. She said, he is not just weak, he is delusional. She went to her desk and picked up her recorder. I need you on the record. Natalie, she said, fully, no more background, no more off-the-record context. I need you to say all of this. I looked at the recorder. If I do this, I said, there is no going back. It destroys the family. The family is already destroyed, Clara said. The only question is whether the truth survives the wreckage. I sat down. Turn it on, I said. Clara pressed the button. My name is Natalie Collins. I said, I am the CEO of Fairline Analytics, and I am here to report a systemic fraud involving the Holloway Civic Trust and Vantage Row Group. I talked for 2 hours. I laid it all out. The grant rejection, the audit, the donor pressure, the vendor network, Mason's lies. When we finished, the sun was setting. The room was shadowed. Clara turned off the recorder. I have enough, she said. I have the whistleblower documents. I have the timeline. I have your testimony. And I have my own funding trail. She looked at her laptop. I can write this tonight, she said. My phone buzzed. It was Ben. I picked it up. Ben? Natalie? Ben said. His voice sounded dead. I just got an alert. What is it? Greenspire, he said. The company that won the Holloway grant instead of us. What about them? They just announced an acquisition. Ben said. They are buying DataCore. I felt the blood drain from my face. DataCore held the patent for the specific API integration we use to access banking ledgers. It was a utility patent. We paid them a licensing fee. If Greenspire buys them, I started. They can revoke our license, Ben said, or they can jack up the price by 1,000%. Natalie, if this deal goes through, we are dead. We can't operate without that API. They are closing the loop, I whispered. What? Greenspire is a Vantage Row partner. I said, they are using their farm league to kill us. They aren't just auditing us. They are buying the ground we stand on. I hung up. I looked at Clara. They are buying the patent, I said. They are going to shut me down within the month. Clara looked at her engagement ring. She twisted it on her finger. Round and round. We can't wait, she said. What? The wedding, she said. We can't wait until after the wedding. If we wait, your company will be gone, and Mason will have signed the marriage license. He will be legally bound to me, and I will be bound to this mess. She looked at me. Her eyes were terrified, but resolute. I am thinking about publishing next week, she said, before the rehearsal dinner. I stared at her. If you do that, I said, you end the engagement. You humiliate him. You destroy his career. I know, she said. But if you don't? I asked. If I don't, she said, Mason becomes the fall guy. When this eventually comes out, and it will come out, Vane will blame everything on the ambitious junior partner who lied on his compliance forms. Mason will go to prison. Natalie, I thought about the slide deck, strategic affiliate. He might go to prison anyway. I said, maybe, Clara said, but if we publish now, if we expose the whole system, maybe we can show that he was coerced, that he was part of a machine that gave him no choice. She stood up and walked to the window. It is a rescue mission, she said softly, or it is an execution. I don't know which one yet. I stood up and stood beside her. We looked out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, Mason was probably trying to explain to our parents that everything was going to be fine. Somewhere out there, Marcus Vane was allocating another award to buy another favor. Do it, I said. Clara looked at me. Are you sure? I thought about my company. I thought about the bakery owner who needed $40,000. I thought about the women of influence telling me to play ball. Burn it down, I said. Clara nodded. She went back to her laptop and opened a new file. She typed a title, The Charity of Corruption, How One Foundation Bought a City. She looked at me. I need a quote for the opening. She said, I thought about what Mason had told me at that first dinner, the advice that had started it all. Tell them this. I said, My brother told me his fiancée was too accomplished to compete with. He was right, because while he was playing checkers with my reputation, she was learning how to flip the board. Clara typed it, then she hit save. The war had begun. We established the rules of engagement in my kitchen. Over cold takeout and a stack of legal pads, it was a treaty negotiation between two sovereign states that happened to be sharing a potential family tragedy. "I will not steal," I said, drawing a line down the center of the page. "I will not hack Mason's laptop. I will not take physical files from his briefcase. I am not going to become them to beat them." Clara nodded, her pen hovering over her own pad. "Agreed, but you will provide context. If I find a document, you tell me what it means. You verify the timelines. You cross-reference your own interactions with the trust." "I can do that," I said, "and on my side," Clara said, writing quickly. "Full disclosure. When I write the piece, I state clearly that my previous work was funded by a Vantage Row proxy. I list every conflict. I burn my own credibility to the ground so they cannot use it as ammunition against the story. And absolutely no edits from the publisher that I do not approve." It sounded noble. It sounded brave. But as I looked at Clara, I saw the tremor in her hand. She was about to destroy the career she had spent 10 years building, and she was doing it to stop the man she had agreed to marry. "We are walking a very fine line." I said, "We fell off the line a long time ago." "Natalie," she replied, "now we are just trying to survive the fall." 3 days later, I found myself in the belly of the beast. Mason had invited me to the Vantage Row annual leadership retreat months ago. Back when I was just his impressive little sister who needed to be shown off, he had forgotten to rescind the invitation, or perhaps he thought uninviting me would look suspicious. Either way, I packed a bag and drove 2 hours north to the summit, a resort that looked like a rustic lodge but cost $600 a night. The air smelled of pine needles and expensive cologne. The parking lot was full of luxury SUVs. I walked into the main ballroom for the opening mixer, wearing a smile that felt like it was stapled to my face. Mason found me near the bar. He looked tired, the skin around his eyes tight with stress, but he turned on the charm the moment he saw me. "Nat," he boomed, pulling me into a hug that was less an embrace and more a restraint. "I am so glad you made it. I was worried you would be too busy with everything. I decided I needed a break." I lied. "Good, good," he said, steering me toward a group of men in fleeces and vests. "Just relax this weekend. No business talk, just family and fun." But of course, there was no such thing as no business talk at a Vantage Row event. The entire weekend was a masterclass in soft power. I watched as executives played golf with potential clients, losing just enough strokes to keep egos inflated. I watched as wine flowed freely, loosening tongues and lowering defenses. The real education happened on Saturday afternoon. I was sitting in the back of a session titled Corporate Social Responsibility, the New ROI. Marcus Vane was on stage. He didn't use a podium. He walked the stage like a preacher, holding a microphone, his voice warm and hypnotic. "Philanthropy is not just about giving back," Vane said to the room of 200 ambitious consultants. "It is about alignment. When we partner with an organization like the Holloway Civic Trust, we are not just writing a check, we are building a bridge." He paused for effect. "We are telling the community that we share their values, and when the community trusts us, the market trusts us. A reputation for goodness is the most efficient contract lubricant in the world." The audience nodded. They took notes. I looked to my left. A junior partner was whispering to a client, a man I recognized as the CEO of a mid-sized logistics firm. "It is a great program," the partner whispered. "You make a $50,000 donation to the Trust's scholarship fund. Next month, the Trust honors you at the spring gala. You get a photo op with the mayor. Suddenly, those zoning permits you have been stuck on, they start moving." The CEO looked interested. "Is that guaranteed?" The partner smiled. "We don't use words like guaranteed. We use words like synergy. But let's just say the Trust has a very high success rate for its partners." I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. It wasn't a conspiracy in the shadows. It was a sales pitch in broad daylight. They were selling corruption as a premium service tier. I excused myself and went to the bathroom. I splashed cold water on my face. I looked at myself in the mirror. Contract lubricant. That was what they called my life's work. That was what they called the grants I had fought for. Lubricant for their deals. When I came out, Mason was waiting in the hallway. "You left early," he said. "I had a headache," I said. He studied me. "You are acting strange. Natalie, you have been quiet all weekend. I am just observing." "Mason." "Observing what?" "How the sausage is made," I said. Mason stepped closer. His voice dropped. "Don't judge what you don't understand," he said. "This is how the world works. You think your little loans change anything? These people move mountains. They move money." "Mason," I said, "there is a difference." He looked like he wanted to shake me. Instead, he straightened his vest. "Just be ready for dinner," he said. "Vane wants to say hello. Be charming." "Please." I survived the dinner. I smiled at Marcus Vane. I let him tell me how proud he was of Mason. I let him make a joke about how accomplished women run in the family, a reference to Clara that made my stomach turn. When I got back to the city on Sunday night, I went straight to Clara's. She opened the door before I could knock. "You need to see this," she said. She led me to her desk. There was a new file on her screen. It was a spreadsheet, sent by her source inside the trust. "It looks like a menu," I said. "It is a menu," Clara said. I leaned in. The columns were labeled Item, Cost, and Deliverable. Row 4, Community Leader Award. Price, $25,000. Deliverable, Local Press Package, plus City Council Intro. Row 8, Visionary of the Year. Price, $75,000. Deliverable, National Trade Coverage, plus Regulatory Advisory Board. Seat, Row 12, Integrity in Journalism, Fellowship. Price, $100,000. Deliverable, Directed Investigation into Rival Market Sector. I stared at Row 12. That was Clara. That was her career. "They priced me," she whispered. $100,000. That is what my integrity cost. "And look at this," she said, scrolling down. Row 20, Emerging Innovator Honor. Price, Allocation Pending. Deliverable, Brand Alignment plus Risk Mitigation. Emerging Innovator. I read, "That is the award they are giving me at the engagement gala." Clara nodded. "Risk mitigation. Natalie, they aren't honoring you. They are buying insurance. If you accept the award, you are part of the family. You can't criticize them without looking like a hypocrite. They are branding me into silence." I said, "Exactly." We sat there in silence. The cynicism of it was breathtaking. They had quantified human virtue. They had put a price tag on honor. My phone buzzed. It was Mason. "Where are you?" "I stopped by your place. We need to talk." I ignored it. "He knows." Clara said, "How?" "I don't know." She said, "But he has been texting me all day, asking if I'm happy, asking if I love him. He sounds desperate." Mason found us an hour later. He didn't call. He just showed up at Clara's building. He must have bribed the doorman, because there was a heavy pounding on the apartment door. And then Mason's voice. "Clara, open the door. I know she's in there." Clara looked at me. I nodded. She opened the door. Mason stumbled in. He looked like he had been unraveling for hours. His tie was gone, his shirt unbuttoned at the collar. He looked from Clara to me, and the betrayal on his face was raw and ugly. "You are working together," he said. It wasn't a question. "We are talking." "Mason," Clara said calmly. "Talking?" He laughed, a harsh cracking sound. "You are conspiring. I saw the file. Natalie, I saw the deck in your car at the retreat. You think I am stupid? You think I don't know when my own sister is gathering evidence against me?" "I didn't gather evidence." I said, "I just opened my eyes." Mason walked into the room, pacing in a tight circle. "You don't understand," he said. "You are going to ruin everything. We are trying to save you." Clara said, "Mason, look at the ledger. Look at what they are doing. They are selling awards. They are washing money. I know, Mason screamed. The silence that followed was absolute. Clara went still. You know? Mason stopped pacing. He slumped against the wall, sliding down until he was crouching on the floor. He put his head in his hands. Of course I know, he whispered. Everyone knows. That is the point. It is the ecosystem. You feed the trust. The trust feeds the firm. The firm feeds us. He looked up at Clara, his eyes wet with tears. They promised me. Clara, promised you what? She asked softly. The partnership, he said. The senior equity partner track. It is worth $3 million over 5 years. They said it was mine. And what did you have to do for it? I asked. Mason looked at me, then at Clara. I had to land the plane, he said. What does that mean? Clara asked. The wedding, Mason said. The merger, that is what they call it. The merger of the Collins brand and the Wynn reputation. They said if I could get you to the altar, if I could get you to join the fold, your credibility would cover our sins. He reached out a hand toward Clara. They are afraid of you. Clara, they know you can hurt them, so they wanted to buy you. And I was the broker. Clara stared at him. She looked like she had been slapped. You proposed to me to secure a promotion? She asked. Her voice was barely a whisper. No, Mason cried. No, I love you. I do. But when Vane told me how much it would help, how it would secure our future, I thought, why not? Why not have both? Why not have the woman I love and the success I deserve? He turned to me. And you, Natalie, they were going to help you. The award, the funding. Vane said if you played ball, he would make Fairline the exclusive partner for the city's small business initiative. He was going to make you rich. Nat, I felt a surge of nausea. He was going to make me a pet. I said, just like he made you. Mason stood up. He looked frantic. You have to stop, he said. Both of you. You have to stop digging. If you publish anything, if you embarrass Vane, the deal is off. The promotion is gone, and they will come for us. They are already coming for me, I shouted. They audited me. Mason, they are killing my company. That is just pressure, Mason said. It stops the moment you get in line. Just take the award. Natalie, stand on that stage next week. Smile, and let Clara give her speech. That is all you have to do. And what about the truth? Clara asked. The truth doesn't pay the mortgage, Mason yelled. I looked at my brother. And suddenly, the anger drained away, leaving only a terrible, aching sadness. I remembered when we were kids. I was 7, and a boy at the park had pushed me into the mud. Mason was 10. He hadn't asked questions. He hadn't weighed the political consequences. He had just charged across the playground and shoved the boy down, standing over me like a jagged little shield. Don't touch her, he had said. She is my sister. He had protected me then. But somewhere along the way, he had decided that protecting himself was more important. I stood up. I am not taking the award. Mason, I said. Mason looked at me. His face hardened. The panic was replaced by a cold resolve. Then you are on your own, he said. He looked at Clara. And you? Clara took off her engagement ring. She placed it on the desk next to the ledger. I think you should go. Mason, she said. Mason looked at the ring. He looked at the woman he was supposed to marry. He didn't cry. He didn't beg. He just nodded, as if a contract had been terminated. Fine, he said, but don't say I didn't warn you. He walked out. The retaliation began the next morning. It started with the reviews. I woke up to a flood of notifications. 50 one-star reviews on Google and Trustpilot for Fairline Analytics. They were all posted between 3 and 4 in the morning. Predatory lender, hidden fees, stole my data. They were fake. I knew they were fake, but to the algorithm, they were real. Our rating dropped from 4.9 to 2.3 in 6 hours. Then the phone rang. It was Ben. Our lead investor just called. He said, "Please tell me good news." Ben. He is exercising his redemption clause. Ben said. He wants his capital back. Now. He can't do that. I said, the lockup period is 2 years. He claims we are in material breach of the ethics clause. Ben said, because of the audit. He says the risk is too high. How much? I asked. $500,000. Ben said, if we pay him out. We miss payroll next week. I sat down at my kitchen table. The walls were closing in. An hour later, I got an email from a journalist I didn't know, a reporter from a tabloid-style business blog. Ms. Collins, I am writing a story regarding allegations that you used your previous position at a data firm to misappropriate customer identities for your current startup. We have a source who claims to have logs, requesting comment by 5 p.m. I had never worked at a data firm before Fairline. The allegation was a complete fabrication. But once it was printed, once the headline CEO accused of identity theft was out there, the truth wouldn't matter. The stain would be permanent. I called Saul, my lawyer. They are swarming. I said, it is a shock and awe campaign. Saul said, his voice was calm, which somehow made it worse. They want you to panic. They want you to beg for a settlement. I want to sue them. I said, I want to sue Vane. I want to sue the trust. With what money? Saul asked. You are about to miss payroll. Litigation costs $10,000 a month just to keep the lights on. So what do? You document it. Saul said, you survive, and you pray that your journalist friend has a bomb big enough to clear the room. I went to Clara's office at the Brightwell Media Building. It was the only place we could talk without fear of bugs, or so we thought. She was pacing her small cubicle. We publish tomorrow, she said. I looked at her. Are you ready? No, she said, but we have no choice. They are destroying you. Natalie, if we wait until the wedding, there won't be a Fairline left to save. What is the plan? I asked. Safety in numbers, she said. We co-sign the piece. I write the investigative portion. You write a first-person sidebar confirming the pressure campaign. We release the ledger. We release the whistleblower emails. We make it so loud that retaliation becomes proof of guilt. It sounded dangerous. It sounded reckless. It sounded like the only way out. My phone rang. It was Ben again. Natalie, he said. I found something. What now? The acquisition. He said, Greenspire buying DataCore. I know. I said, they are buying the patent. I dug into the funding. Ben said, Greenspire didn't have the cash for the buy. They got a bridge loan. From who? A shell company called Apex Strategies. Ben said, and who owns Apex? Ben paused. It is a nonprofit entity. He said, its board of directors is identical to the board of the Holloway Civic Trust. I closed my eyes. The trust loaned the money to the company to buy the patent to kill my business. They are using charitable dollars to fund a corporate assassination. I said, it is illegal. Ben said, it is wildly illegal. It is tax fraud. It is self-dealing. Send me the documents. Ben, I hung up and looked at Clara. We have the smoking gun. I said, the trust funded the acquisition. Clara's eyes widened. That is it, she said. That is the felony. That is the thing that sends people to federal prison. She sat down at her computer. I am sending the draft to my editor, she said. We go to print in 24 hours. She hit send. We sat there, watching the progress bar. It felt like launching a missile. 5 minutes later, Clara's desk phone rang. She picked it up. Hello? She listened. Her face went pale. Yes, she said. I understand. But the timing is... She listened again. I see. She hung up the phone slowly. What happened? I asked. That was my editor. She said, and? He says we can't run it. Why? He says the legal department has concerns. Clara said, he says the sourcing is too anonymous. He wants to soften the language about Vantage Row. He suggests we wait until... She looked at me, until after the wedding. I finished. Clara nodded. He said it would be distasteful to run a hit piece on my fiancé's family right before the ceremony. He is talking to them. I said, Clara nodded, Vane got to him, or the trust threatened to pull their advertising spend from the magazine. Brightwell Media is compromised. Natalie, we can't publish? Not here. She said, "And if I take it somewhere else, my contract says Brightwell owns my notes. They can sue me for theft of intellectual property. They can bury the story in legal hell for years. So we are silenced." I said. Clara looked at the computer screen. "Not silenced," she said. "Just unplatformed." She turned to me. "There is one place they can't edit us," she said. "Where?" "The gala," she said. I stared at her. The engagement gala. The night I was supposed to accept my award. The night she was supposed to give a speech thanking the family. "It is live," Clara said. "There is no delay. There are no editors. There are 200 of the most powerful people in the city in one room, and microphones." I said, "And microphones." She agreed. "It is suicide." I said, "If we do that, if we hijack their event, we will be pariahs. We will never work in this city again. We are already pariahs." "Natalie," Clara said, "we just haven't been notified yet." She reached out and took my hand. "You are the rising innovator," she said, "and I am the blushing bride. Let's give them the show they paid for." The night of the gala arrived like a storm front, heavy, dark, and inevitable. I wore a silver dress that my mother had picked out. It cost $4,000. It shimmered under the lights of the ballroom. I stood backstage. I could hear the murmur of the crowd. I could hear the clinking of glasses. My parents were in the front row. I had seen them earlier. They looked terrified. They knew Mason and Clara had fought. They knew I was estranged. But they were holding on to the desperate hope that the ceremony would fix everything, that the ritual of the gala would smooth over the cracks in the foundation. Mason was there, too. He was standing near the wing, looking handsome and hollow. He caught my eye. He didn't smile. He just looked at me with a pleading intensity. "Stick to the script," his eyes said. "Please, for the love of God, stick to the script." The lights dimmed. The director of the Holloway Civic Trust walked onto the stage. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, "tonight, we celebrate the future. We celebrate the bonds that tie our community together, and we begin by honoring a young woman who represents the spirit of innovation." He looked toward the curtain. "Please welcome Natalie Collins." I took a breath. I touched the pocket of my dress, feeling the flash drive that held the ledger, the emails, and the proof of the Apex loan. I walked out into the light. The applause was polite, restrained, the applause of people who had paid for a ticket and expected a performance. I walked to the microphone. I looked out at the sea of faces. I saw Marcus Vane in the center, smiling like a shark who had just smelled blood. I looked at Mason. I looked at Clara, standing in the wings on the other side, clutching her speech. I gripped the podium. "Thank you," I said. My voice echoed in the vast room. I looked at the teleprompter. "I am humbled by this honor. I want to thank the Trust for their support." I looked at the audience. "I am supposed to thank you," I said. "I am supposed to tell you that this award is a dream come true." I paused. The room went very quiet. "But I can't do that," I said, "because a dream implies that I'm asleep, and I am finally wide awake." I saw Vane's smile falter. I saw Mason take a step forward from the wings. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the flash drive. I held it up. It caught the spotlight, a tiny silver talisman against the darkness. "This isn't an award speech," I said. "This is a receipt," and the war began. The ballroom of the Grand Meridian was a theater of war disguised as a celebration. The chandeliers dripped with crystal, casting a fractured light over 300 of the city's most powerful people. From where I stood near the velvet ropes of the backstage wing, the guests did not look like people. They looked like assets on a balance sheet. I watched Marcus Vane move through the crowd, shaking hands with the practiced warmth of a man who knew the exact net worth of every palm he touched. My parents sat at table 4, right in the splash zone of the stage. My mother was wearing a gown that was slightly too iridescent, nervously twisting a napkin in her lap. My father looked stiff, his eyes darting around the room as if he expected the FBI to rappel from the ceiling. They were proud, yes, their children were being honored by the Holloway Civic Trust. But they were also terrified. They knew, in the vague, instinctive way that prey animals know, that the air pressure in the room had dropped. Mason was the only one moving. He was vibrating with a frantic energy, darting between the sound booth, the VIP table, and the wings where Clara and I were waiting. He wasn't acting like a groom. He was acting like a risk manager. He smoothed his tie, checked his watch, and whispered fiercely into his phone, his eyes scanning the exits. He was trying to land the plane, just like he had said. He was trying to deliver us, his sister and his fiancée, as a bundled package of credibility to his masters. Clara stood next to me. She was wearing a white silk dress that made her look like a statue. She held a stack of index cards in her hand, her knuckles white. "Let me see it," I whispered. She handed me the cards. They were not the speech she had written on my kitchen table. They were new. The paper stock was different, heavy, cream-colored, with the Brightwell Media logo embossed on the back. I read the first card. "Tonight is about unity. It is about the seamless integration of corporate stewardship and community growth. I am honored to join a family that understands the value of legacy." I looked up at her. "Who wrote this?" I asked. "My editor sent it over an hour ago," Clara said. Her voice was flat, devoid of emotion. "He said the legal department insisted on some tonal adjustments to ensure we don't conflict with the magazine's sponsorship agreements. It is a surrender." I said, "It is a script," she corrected. "They don't want a journalist. Natalie, they want a mascot. They want the Pulitzer Prize winner to stand up there and tell the world that Vantage Row is good, that the trust is holy, and that everything is fine." She took the cards back. Her hands were trembling, but her eyes were dry. "I am not going to read it," she said. I looked at Mason, who was currently laughing too loudly at a joke made by the trust's director. "If you go off script," I said, "they will cut the mic. Then we have to be faster than the sound guy." She said. The lights dimmed. The room hushed. The air conditioner hummed. A low drone that sounded like a countdown. The director of the trust, a man named Sterling, who had a smile like a shark, walked to the podium. "Ladies and gentlemen," he boomed, "tonight we are here to celebrate innovation. We are here to celebrate the future, and to help us do that, we have a special honoree, a young woman who has built a company from the ground up, demonstrating the kind of grit and vision that the Holloway Civic Trust exists to support." He gestured to the heavy curtains. "Please welcome the CEO of Fairline Analytics and our newest rising innovator, Natalie Collins." The applause was polite, rhythmic, and entirely hollow. It was the sound of people fulfilling a contractual obligation. I walked out. The spotlight hit me, blindingly bright. I felt the heat of it on my skin. It didn't feel like an honor. It felt like a branding iron. They were illuminating me so they could own me. Rising Innovator, the title was a leash. If I accepted it, I accepted their rules. I accepted the silence. I walked to the podium. I adjusted the microphone. I looked out at the sea of faces, the donors, the developers, the politicians. I saw Mrs. Caldwell, the woman who had told me to play ball, watching me with a look of expectant ownership. I saw Marcus Vane, leaning back in his chair, confident that the system he had built was foolproof. I looked at Mason. He was standing in the wings, giving me a thumbs up. His face was a mask of desperate hope. I took a breath. I thought about the bakery owner. I thought about the audit. I thought about the slide deck that listed me as a strategic affiliate. I did not take the flash drive out of my pocket. Not yet. "Thank you," I said. The room went quiet. "I am supposed to stand here and tell you that I am humbled," I said. My voice was steady, magnified by the speakers to fill every corner of the room. "I am supposed to thank the trust for this award. I am supposed to tell you that this recognition is the validation of 5 years of hard work." I paused. I saw Vane's smile tighten just a fraction. "But validation is a tricky currency," I continued, "because in this room, validation often comes with a transaction fee." A ripple of confusion went through the crowd. This was not the standard gratitude speech. "We talk a lot about value in this city," I said. "We talk about ROI. We talk about synergy. But I have spent the last few weeks learning about a different kind of economy. An economy where awards are not earned, but allocated. An economy where philanthropy is used not to lift people up, but to lock them in." Mason took a step forward from the wings. I could see him mouthing my name. "Natalie." "Stop." I didn't look at him. I looked directly at my parents. "I built my company to help small businesses escape predatory lenders." I said, "I built it to bring transparency to a broken system, so it would be hypocritical of me to accept an honor from a system that demands opacity as the price of admission." The room was silent now. Deadly silent. The kind of silence that precedes an explosion. "I cannot accept this award," I said, "because true innovation isn't about fitting into a network of favors. It is about disrupting that network when it becomes a cage." I stepped back from the podium. There was no applause. There was only a low, shocked murmur. The director looked ready to rush the stage, but he was frozen, unsure if interrupting me would make it worse. I looked at the wings. "Your turn," I mouthed to Clara. Clara walked out. She didn't wait for an introduction. She walked past Mason, who grabbed her arm. She shook him off with a violence that made him stumble. She took the podium. She placed the stack of index cards, the approved speech, on the wood surface, and then she pushed them off. The cards scattered across the stage floor, white rectangles against the black paint. "My name is Clara Wynne," she said. The microphone whined slightly, a high-pitched feedback loop that set everyone's teeth on edge. "I was asked to speak tonight about the integrity of journalism," she said, "about the power of truth." She looked at Marcus Vane. He was sitting up straight now, his eyes cold and hard. "But truth is complicated when it is funded by the very people you are supposed to be investigating," she said. A gasp went through the room. This was the third rail. "You did not talk about the money." "I recently learned," Clara said, speaking faster now, sensing the clock ticking down, "that the fellowship which funded my reporting on the water crisis, the reporting that won me a Pulitzer Prize, was underwritten by a donor-advised fund linked to Vantage Row Group." She said the name, Vantage Row Group. Vane stood up. He signaled to someone in the back of the room. "I was used," Clara said, her voice rising. "I was used to clear the market for a corporate acquisition, and because I cannot separate my reputation from that compromise, I am recusing myself. I am not a symbol of your integrity. I am evidence of your manipulation." Mason was running now. He burst out of the wings, his face red, his eyes wild. He wasn't thinking about the optics anymore. He was thinking about survival. "Clara!" he shouted. "Stop!" He grabbed her by the shoulders, trying to pull her away from the microphone. "Let go of me!" Clara yelled. The audience was on its feet. Phones were out. People were filming. The facade of polite society had shattered, revealing the ugly, desperate struggle underneath. I ran to help her. I grabbed Mason's arm. "Get off her! Mason!" I screamed. In the scuffle, my clutch bag fell to the floor. My phone, which I had rigged to the venue's Bluetooth system earlier, a desperate backup plan I hadn't intended to use, skidded across the stage. The sound guy, in a panic, must have hit the wrong fader, or perhaps he was one of the invisible people who was tired of being treated like furniture. The line opened. My phone was still playing the audio file I had queued up in the dressing room. It was a recording Clara had made during her interview with the whistleblower. But it wasn't the whistleblower's voice. It was a recording the whistleblower had provided. A recording of a strategy meeting at Vantage Row. The voice of Marcus Vane boomed through the ballroom speakers, distorted but unmistakable. "We don't need to bribe them, Richard. That is messy. We just need to buy their credibility. You give the trust $100,000. The trust gives the journalist a fellowship. The journalist writes the story that kills our competition. It is a perfect circle. It is clean." The audio cut out with a sharp screech of feedback. The silence that followed was heavy enough to crush lungs. Marcus Vane was standing frozen near his table. Every eye in the room was fixed on him. The perfect circle had just been drawn in public. Mason let go of Clara. He looked at the audience. He looked at the donors who were staring at him with a mixture of horror and recognition. He looked at Vane. He realized, in that split second, that he was dead, professionally, socially. He was a corpse standing upright. The director of the trust grabbed a microphone from a stand. "This is a technical malfunction," he shouted, his voice cracking. "This is a fabrication. We are being hacked." People were already leaving. The mayor was being hurried out the side exit by his security detail. Mrs. Caldwell was gathering her furs, looking at my mother with a gaze that promised retribution. I stepped back to the microphone. Mason was too in shock to stop me. Clara was leaning against the podium, breathing hard. I looked at the director. I looked at Vane. I didn't shout. I didn't need to. "If it is a fabrication," I said, my voice echoing in the fracturing room, "then open your books." I held their gaze. "If you are innocent, an independent audit won't scare you." I turned and walked off the stage. The green room backstage felt like a bunker during an air raid. The venue staff was gone. The catering carts were abandoned. Mason sat on a folding chair in the corner. He had loosened his tie. He was staring at the floor. Clara stood by the door, her arms crossed. She had stopped shaking. She looked like someone who had just survived a car crash and was checking her limbs for breaks. I stood between them. Mason looked up. His eyes were empty. "You killed me," he whispered. "You killed yourself." "Mason," I said, "you signed the papers. You pitched the strategy. You ghost-wrote the lies." "I was doing my job," he shouted, his voice echoing off the concrete walls. "I was doing what I had to do to secure our future. And look at your future." "Mason," Clara said softly, "look at it." Mason put his head in his hands. "Vane is going to hang me," he said. "He's going to say I went rogue. He is going to say I fabricated the connections to impress the partners. He is going to make me the architect of the whole thing. We know." I said, "That is why we did this." Mason looked up, confused. "What?" "If we had waited," I said, "they would have buried you quietly. You would have gone to prison for fraud, and Vane would have sent flowers to your cell. By doing this in public," Clara added, "by playing that tape, we tied Vane to the wreck. We made it impossible for him to claim ignorance." Mason laughed, a bitter, jagged sound. "You think that helps me? I am still done. I will never work in finance again. I will be disbarred." "Yes," I said, "you will. But you won't be the only one." The door opened. It was Saul, my lawyer. He looked disheveled, but his eyes were bright. "We need to move," he said. "The trust lawyers are already filing injunctions. They are going to try to seize your phones. They are going to try to seal the room." "Do we have the evidence?" I asked. Saul nodded. "I have the flash drive. I have the copies. I have sent the digital packet to the Attorney General's office and to 3 national papers. It is out of the bottle. Natalie." He looked at Mason. "Who is this?" Saul asked. "This is my brother," I said. "Is he a hostile witness?" Saul asked. Mason looked at me. He looked at Clara. He looked at the ruins of his life. "I don't know," Mason whispered. "I don't know what I am." "You are a witness," Clara said. "That is all that matters right now." "Come with us," I said. Mason shook his head. "I can't. I have to talk to Mom and Dad. They left." "Mason," I said gently, "they left 10 minutes ago." He flinched as if I had hit him. "Go," he said. "Just go." We left him there, sitting on the folding chair under the fluorescent lights, the golden boy, the pride of the family, alone in the wreckage of his own ambition. We sat in Saul's office 3 hours later. The adrenaline had faded, leaving a deep, aching exhaustion. Clara was on the phone with an editor from a rival paper in New York. She was speaking in short, clipped sentences. "Yes, I have the ledger. Yes, I have the audio. No, I am not publishing it myself. I am a source. I am recused." She hung up. "They are interested," she said, "but they are cautious. Vantage Row has lawyers that can burn down a newsroom. They want to verify everything. It will take weeks. Weeks gives them time to spin it." I said, "Weeks gives them time to destroy evidence." Saul said. He was pouring whiskey into paper cups, but the genie is out. That audio clip is already on social media. It has 50,000 views. The narrative is out of their control. What happens to my company? I asked. Saul took a sip of whiskey. The acquisition of DataCore will probably go through. He said, they will try to squeeze you, but now that the spotlight is on them, if they shut you down, it looks like retaliation. It looks like guilt. Paradoxically, you might be safer now than you were yesterday. But I am toxic. I said, no bank will touch me. You are dangerous. Saul corrected. There is a difference. I looked at Clara. She was staring out the window at the city skyline. She didn't look like a bride. She didn't look like a journalist. She looked like a soldier who had survived the first wave but knew the war was going to be long. What about Mason? I asked. Clara didn't turn around. He made his choice. She said, he can come forward, tell the truth, and maybe cut a deal. Or he can stay loyal to a man who will feed him to the wolves. She turned to look at me. I loved him. I know. I said, I think I loved who he wanted to be. She said, not who he was. The next morning, the headlines were vague. Disturbance at charity gala. Technical glitch interrupts awards. The Brightwell media machine was working overtime to scrub the internet. But the video was there. The audio was there. The truth was bleeding through the cracks. I went to my office. The door was unlocked. Ben was inside, sleeping on the couch. He woke up when I walked in. Did we win? He asked, rubbing his eyes. I sat down at my desk. I looked at the black screen of my computer. No, I said, we didn't win. We just didn't die. I turned on the monitor. The risk flag was still there. The negative reviews were still there. The angry emails from investors were piling up. But there was one new email. It was from Elena, the bakery owner. The first loan I had ever approved. Ms. Collins, I saw the video online. I don't know what is happening, but I know you helped me when no one else would. If you need a character witness, or just a free coffee, I am here. I read it twice. I looked at the empty desk where Mason's picture used to sit. I had thrown it out weeks ago. I picked up the phone. Ben. I said, yeah? Get the team together. I said, we have work to do. We aren't a bank anymore, I said. We are a resistance movement. I looked out the window. The city was gray and imposing, a fortress of glass and steel. But somewhere in there, the cracks were spreading. I didn't know if I would keep my company. I didn't know if Clara would ever work again. I didn't know if my brother would go to jail. The story wasn't over. The ending wasn't happy. But for the first time in my life, the story was mine. Thank you for listening to this story. We have walked a long road with Natalie and Clara. From the polite silence of a family dinner to the chaotic truth of the gala stage, it is a story about the cost of ambition and the courage it takes to burn down the very structures that were built to contain us. I would love to hear your thoughts on the ending. Did Natalie make the right choice? Was Mason a villain or a victim? Please leave a comment below and tell me where you are listening from. I am always amazed to see how far these stories travel. If you enjoyed this journey, please subscribe to Revenge Stories for more realistic, emotionally grounded dramas. Share your theories. Share the story. And remember, sometimes the only way to win the game is to flip the board. Thank you.